Dear Grace, today will be a little bit different. No more lists. Today's more of an editorial. I'll maybe or hopefully include a link to where this started. It's a Joe Rogan episode maybe a week ago, where they're talking about universal income. And as much as I love Joe Rogan and his show, they're not very good at math. And they keep missing one very, very, very important point about any concept of universal income. And I wouldn't call it that. I would call it universal basic care. And in the Joe Rogan episode, they tried to figure out, sorry, we still got the trains, unfortunately, Grace. That's probably never going to change, but it's not really going to be an applause break on an editorial, but who knows? Maybe editorials get applause breaks sometimes. On the podcast, they were talking about how to end homelessness through universal basic income. The problem is, Joe's being way too fair, and to give everyone, so their calculation, I think they're going to give 60 or 80K a year to everyone, regardless of income, which is the mistake, and that's the problem. You need universal basic care, not income. Basic care means everyone has a place to stay at night and during the day. You basically have a home, whether that be an apartment, a room in a house, their own house, or whatever. That is the goal of universal basic care. Now, because Joe's generous, of course, he thinks everyone should get it. I think he's just too high and too kind. And what he should say is everyone who needs universal basic care can have access to it. So this is my logic and my concept. Sorry, trains again. It's my concept for ending homelessness. So it's universal basic care. And basically, anyone that is currently homeless, living on the street, or living in some manner less conducive than normal, i.e. they're not renting, as I said, a house or a room or an apartment or sharing a accommodation or anything. They're living on the street on their own, sleeping wherever at night that they can, whether that be a friend's house, backyard, well, not their backyard, but some sort of shelter, whatever, it really doesn't matter. So I asked ChatGPT how many homeless people there were in the USA. It said about 550,000 in 2020. The population back there in the US was 330 million. So of course, when Joe did his calculation for universal income for everyone, he included everyone in the United States at $60,000 or 80, whatever it was, which works out to trillions and trillions of dollars. And it doesn't even make sense, because where would the money come from if everyone has a universal income? But, anyways, this is my logic. I like the number of 60K. First I did a calculation with 50K, but then to 60. So, for 330 million people to provide universal basic care for 550,000 people, would cost every citizen of the United States between $100 and $105 a year. That's an approximation. Maybe it's a little bit more, maybe it's 110, maybe it's 100. Whatever you want to do, whatever way you want to round that out in your mind, Grace. I think $105 a year per person to end homelessness in the United States is a reasonable amount of money. In my opinion, Grace. And I think the conversation would have gone a lot different with Joe if he had taken this approach. Because now he's in a position to say what I'm about to say, which is $100 a year for every person in the U.S. to end homelessness. Why the fuck hasn't it been done? I don't know. But I think once they actually realize that it's possible, who knows? Anyway, this is how I envision it working. I actually put that through ChatGPT as well, and it came up with a bunch of criticisms about administrative costs and this and that and blah blah blah. And I get it, that's kind of true, but not really. Let's just imagine for a second, Grace, that every single person in the US donated $105 for every person. It's only $105 a year, by the way, Grace. It's not $105 a month. $105 for every person in the US to end homelessness. Hell, even if they just tried it for 1 year, everyone donates $105. That gives the government enough money to pay all the homeless people, not pay, to provide all the homeless people with, let's say, $60K a year, because that's $5K a month, which is a nice easy number for me to remember. Now, I know a lot of people listening would just say, that's a waste of time. They're all a bunch of fucking drug users, and they're just going to spend that money on drugs. And to that I say, that's their fucking choice. If that's how they want to live, fine. But for 1 year, they'll have an option. For 1 year, if they want to get off the street, they can get off the street. $5,000 a month is enough to get a cheap hotel room and get off the street. More than enough to get an apartment, especially if you join forces with two people. If you're a couple on the street, it's 10 grand a month. That's enough for a lot of things. So, I'm going to make some notes, Grace, as I'm doing this. So all of the addictions, whether it's drug, alcohol, whatever addiction you can think of, Grace, most of those come from, actually, Grace, it doesn't matter where their addiction comes from. I don't care. But I do know the chances are most of them do not want to be addicted. I've never met anyone who wants to be addicted. I've been through rehab. I've met people in rehab. I've met people in detox. I've been through the whole system, Grace. I know what it's like. And no one likes it. No one likes being addicted to anything, whether it's a drug or an action or behavior. And while, yes, there's going to be a small percentage that literally kill themselves on drugs because of the extra money, because again, it's their choice. I'm not suggesting they do that. I don't want them to do that. But at some point, we've got to let them make their own choices. Now it's raining outside, Grace, so I've got to go in. I changed my mind, Grace. I didn't go in. And in case you may or may not have noticed, there's not a lot of pauses in this one. I'm recording audio only. And I'm stopping it, not for the train, but my train of thought. So I'm losing my train of thought. I'm going to pause it for once. Make this a little bit easier for you to listen to. And then maybe you'll get off your ass and comment on it. Or someone will. So I think this is a hell of a good idea. And I think it's doable. And although it would be easier to do it with the government, it's doable without the government. An organization could be started tomorrow, and every citizen in the US could donate $105, and within a year, everyone would be off the street and have an opportunity to rebuild their lives however they see fit. Not by the rules of the government, not by the rules of society, not by any regulations. It's simply, we believe we are human. We understand you've gone through some shit. We're going to help you out for the next year with that reasonable amount of money that would change lives. And not change lives in a stupid way like the lottery. It's just giving them a break. It's giving them a chance to regroup. It's getting them off the street. It's getting them cleaned up. How many people in the street right now would take a job if they could? Even one they didn't like, even a menial job. But they can't get clean enough either through addiction or just physically clean enough to get a job. And even if they did, there's no way they're going to get a high enough paying job to get a damage deposit, first and last month's rent, all of that. They'll never be able to save up. The best they can do on the street is get a job, get a cheap motel, maybe move in with a friend, pay them a bit of rent. That's about the best they can do, but it never gets them out of that situation. Unless maybe their plan is to, work at McDonald's and then in 20 years become a manager. Ain't gonna happen. And even their managers get paid shit, so it doesn't matter where you go. You're not gonna start ground level and work your way up to $60,000 anytime soon. However, if you have a year to get your shit together, to get your life together, to organize your thoughts without having to wonder where you're going to sleep, where you're going to eat, what you're going to eat, you actually see a lot of people sleeping under the train tracks because it blocks the rain. But right beside where I live, right where I walk up to the train, almost every day there's also drug users under the train tracks. They don't bug me, I don't bug them. It's their choice. But again, I'm not advocating giving them money and encouraging drug use. If this was a private organization, the money could be handed out as well as resources or access to resources. Alright, I found a place under. I may have just accidentally recorded over something, Grace. I really should just keep it running, but I'm trying to make this a little bit more professional. Teeny tiny bit. Anyway, still outside, found a spot under a tree to sit so the rain doesn't bother me, and maybe I can get all these thoughts out of my head and onto electronic paper. Let me run you through my scenario, Grace. How I would do this if I was in charge or dictator of the world. Either one would work. My own personal case, because I know this system as much as I wouldn't want to have government fucking around. They do already have a system for recognizing everyone who's homeless. It's called welfare. Most people that are homeless accept welfare because why not? It's free money to them, and they got no reason not to. There's no pride left when you're living on the street, whether you're a drug addict or not. So the system is in place, and that could be the first opportunity to get sort of the worst of the worst homeless people off the street. And when I say worst, I mean from their perspective, not ours, not the ones that we don't like looking at, the ones that are in the most need, whether that be drugs or something else. And I would suggest that, again, imagine this is a fairy tale. Oh, sorry, before I go there, Grace, the $105 per person, which isn't a large amount in my mind, even if you have a family of 7, so that means $735. You can afford 7 kids, well, plus the 2 parents or whatever. No, family of 7, including the parents. If you can afford that many kids, you can afford the $700 a year. And if you can't afford the $700 a year, you're not managing your money very well, so why are you criticizing homeless people? In my opinion, Grace. So the other mistake, I think, not necessarily a mistake, but here's another option. Even if we say not every person in the US, but everyone over a certain income. So everyone over a certain income is $105. If they're under that income and they're looking like they may become homeless themselves, there's no point in taking $105 from them. However, the rich bastards, the billionaires, millionaires, and whatnot, maybe they pay $210 or $2,000, and they cover it for 10 people. Or maybe they decide to do a good thing to help clean up their community and their country and the fucking world, and they donate $1 million or $1 billion. Or maybe they're cunts and they don't donate anything. It doesn't matter. But let's say, for whatever reason and whatever scenario, everyone in the US, whatever level they are, whatever they decide to give, raise enough money to get 550,000 people off the street. Now, ChatGPT really thinks it's an administrative nightmare, but it isn't. So again, we'll just pretend my little bubble is the entire world. And I'll guess that Canada is probably about the same sort of scenario as the US. And I bet you a lot of other countries are way less. A lot of countries living in poverty, but there's a difference between poverty in a roof in poverty, or under a roof in poverty, and not under a roof at all. But for now, let's just say this is Canada or the US, where you have a welfare system in place, you have a disability system in place, you have public rehabs in place, you have medical systems, everything. All that's already here. It's not going to cost any extra. But what you don't have is you don't have a person living on the street who has enough money to get into rehab unless it's the cheapest rehab possible and paid for by the government. And those rehabs suck, Grace. Because they're also, in my province, those are private businesses. Those are not government-run facilities. Those are private businesses. Some are non-profit, yes, non-profit, but the director drives a Mercedes. So let me ask you how much of a non-profit that is, and if they're really in the best interest of their quote-unquote patients or of themselves, or maybe a little bit of both. But my point is, private rehabs are a money-making business, and I'm okay with that. But sorry, not private rehabs. Well, in this province, I'm not even sure if there's any provincial rehabs, but who knows, doesn't matter. My point is, with $5,000 a month, it's enough to get into a rehab. So if you are a really bad drug user or whatever, and your only hope is to be in a rehab for 3 months, and that rehab costs $5,000 a month, well, you've got the money now. You can get rid of all of your worries for 3 months. You can go through whatever programs they offer, and hopefully at the end, you'll get back into society, or they'll get back into society. Well, now it's raining a lot, Grace, so I'm gonna go inside, get my rain jacket, and go for a walk, and continue this quote-unquote editorial slash discussion slash conversation slash whatever the fuck it happens to be. Alright, Grace. I moved to my old smoking spot underneath the train because, like I said, no rain. Anyway, back to my concept or my logic or my plan. I don't think the money is an issue. I believe the number was 39 billion or something like that, which is way less than they spend on nearly everything else in the US. But again, forget about the US. Let's pretend that number is the same for the province of British Columbia. Can't speak today. Let's say everybody working in British Columbia, everyone who has a job, no, fuck it, just whatever. So somehow enough people donate because they want to end the problem and they want to be compassionate. The government can implement the program very easily through the welfare system. If they started with the welfare recipients first, or basically walk around the streets. They could literally walk around the streets they could walk up to a couple living in a tent under a tree in a park and say to them, we see you're in a situation, we'd like to help you, or you're on welfare, and they say yes. They're like, okay, well, we're with that department, here's our credentials, here's our information, if you want you can come down to the office and do this, or we can do it right here and right now, and sign them up, issue them a check for $5,000 on the spot, or deposit it into their account because they'll never be able to cash a check because they're homeless. $5,000 on the spot. And, you know, they could be kind and help them to a motel or something too, but the homeless people are pretty resourceful, and I think if they had $5,000 they could figure a way out. Or if there's two of them, that's 10 grand. There you go, you're good. For the next month, you can stay off the street, you can go get cleaned up, whether that's mentally cleaned up, drug cleaned up, physically cleaned up, doesn't matter. You can take a break, you can relax, you don't have to worry about every single aspect of your life, and you can move forward. Because let's face it, the odds of most homeless people moving forward, getting lucky, finding a job that gets them off the street, currently, with the rents in British Columbia, I know I can't say that word, I'll go with BC. The rents in BC, it's just ridiculous, it's impossible. And where does all that money go? Somebody's making money. It's not like BC is poor. And I don't know what the number of BC is, but again, it doesn't matter. I'll guarantee you it's not much more than 110. It might be less. Even with the exchange. So immediately, Grace, what would happen? Let's say they got nearly everyone off the street in a month. 1 month is walking around. Plus, once people know about it, they're going to go to their welfare office and apply for it. But that's only if they're on welfare. If they're not on welfare, they still got to go through the same process. And I don't want some big situation where they have to prove they're homeless. There's enough people out there that would know that they're homeless, whether that be a social worker, police officer, doctor, friend, family, who knows? Maybe if families who had people on the street had this resource, it could help them get off the street. How many homeless people are on the street because they don't talk to their family, because they don't want to live with their family, because they'd rather be alone? And that's not always a mental health issue, Grace. It is sometimes, but not always. For some people, this planet is just too much. Also, having gone through the medical system in British Columbia, which is similar to all of Canada, and a little bit different than the US because of the whole cost thing, but it'd actually be better if we didn't have universal health care in some ways, if everyone could afford to pay for their doctor. Because at least then, they could actually get some action from their doctor. Because in Canada, it's more like a begging game than a healthcare game. You go in, you say you've got a pain or this or that. They ask you a million questions, and they try and direct you into their treatment. You went in there and said, look, I have this, and I want to be treated with that. They'll ask you so many fucking questions and make you jump through so many hoops that you may or may not get it. I'll give an example. I was diagnosed with ADHD. I don't think I have ADHD. Although if you listen to all these podcasts, you may disagree. I just have a different way of focusing. But I fit all the symptoms of ADHD, or I had or have all the symptoms of ADHD. More so as a child and youth than now. Actually, that's not true, Grace. Probably my entire life, except 4 years ago to now. I like how the train's almost the exact volume of my voice. I'm just watching the red lines as I record this, Grace. Maybe what I'll do is just play back this recording for the video. Anyway, where was I? See, ADHD. I knew or suspected or hoped that maybe the ADHD drugs would help my inability to focus sometimes, or my ability to only focus on one thing and not balance out. But I realize now that's all bullshit. However, the only reason I know that's bullshit is because I had the time to figure it out on my own. I had the time to sit back without a job, without a wife, without anything distracting me, to figure out exactly who the fuck I am and who the fuck I want to be. But I couldn't have done that without the time, without the space. So, to continue the story, I went to my doctor and said, I think you should test me for ADHD. Her response? Oh, I can't. I'm not certified. She wasn't certified to test me for ADHD. All she could do is recommend me to a psychiatrist to do the job. Okay, I thought. So I played the game. Unfortunately, the psychiatrists were all cunts. And I told that to them, to their face, basically. I didn't call them cunts, I just said that they were incompetent. And then I went back to the female doctor I had, and I told her she was incompetent, and I dismissed her. Then, in the same office as the first doctor, because this is all government shit, I got a different doctor. Actually, I dismissed her, and she said she didn't want to be my doctor anymore. She actually sent me a letter. I still have a copy of that, Grace. Maybe that's what I should post. Post a letter where the doctor says, oh no, you're too hard of a patient. I can't, I don't understand. Alright, well, then maybe you should go back to school. Anyway, another doctor steps in, exact same qualifications as the first doctor, not a specialist, just a GP. Yet somehow he's qualified to do it. And this was the test, Grace, for ADHD. It was 18 questions that I answered over the phone, because this was during COVID. Sorry about those trains. 18 questions I answered over the phone during COVID. Took about 15 minutes. And at the end of it, I had a prescription for Adderall. That's all it took. The first doctor, the one I want to call the bitch, she could have done that. There's no certification, there's no qualification, there's no special training. It's 18 fucking questions. But oh no, she couldn't do it. I don't think she wanted to do it. That's just my opinion, Chris. Maybe now I'm sounding like a mental health case on the street. However, I have documentation. I requested every single record, medical record, every comment she ever made about my file, everything she put on behind the scenes. Quite frankly, it was very unprofessional, but I don't care about that anymore. My point is, the system sucks. And you could look at it the other way. Maybe that's too easy to get Adderall. Because Adderall isn't, when it works, it works. But when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Anyway, long story short, my point I'm trying to make here is, if I would have had a doctor that would actually respect my needs, my thoughts, my opinions, I wouldn't have had to wait basically years for that prescription. And the prescription did help. It did help me focus. Unfortunately, sometimes too much. And while it worked for a while and helped me sort of move to the next stage, at some point I realized it's affecting my thought process too much. It's not an authentic person that was writing. It was still me, but it was rushed. Like most of my recordings to you have been, probably including this one. Although today I don't really feel like, I'm not worried about the time today. Still not worried about the quality either. Anyways, my point is, with $5,000 a month, I could have hired a private psychiatrist. I could have instructed him or her what I thought my issues were and how I wanted to deal with it, and which opinions of theirs I wanted or didn't want, or what suggestions they have. I don't need them to tell me what to do. Their job is to give me suggestions. I'm an adult. I'll make my own fucking decisions, thank you. Which brings me back to the homeless. Most of the homeless, again, regardless, whether they have no mental health issues, whether they have some mental health issues, whether they have some addictions, or whether they're completely spaced out 24 hours a day on whatever drug they choose, or drunk, or fucking in the woods, I don't care. It doesn't matter. They're adults. They went down a path that probably wasn't their choice. And for anyone to criticize someone like that, obviously has never been in that position, but obviously they have very little compassion or empathy, which is sad. However, let's go back to my fairy tale. When people start getting $5,000 a month, it'll definitely help the economy, because that $5,000 will be gone at the end of every month. Be spent at businesses, hotels, rentals, whatever. It's all going right back into the economy. It's not like they're going to open up a savings account and just collect it. This is for people that are homeless, people that have been verified to be homeless. Again, not through some extreme process, but a simple verification. So once their universal basic needs are once their universal basic needs are met, food and shelter, very basic, They don't have to be in luxury hotels. They can be starting over again, but this time they'll be starting over with a chance. Because whatever put them on the street, our system, and let's face it, it's a system of every person that votes that's put these people on the street. Because there's enough money out there. There's enough money out there to make a difference. And it's not going to hurt anyone. $110 a year, or even just once, and do an experiment for a year, isn't going to kill anyone. I'm sitting here watching 60, 70, 80, 90, $100,000 vehicles drive by, hundreds of them a minute. There's money out there. It's not a problem. But maybe just people like to complain. Maybe people, like to complain about the homeless because it makes themselves feel better. But most of these people are working paycheck to paycheck. Almost anyone and everyone is at risk. I'll bet you more people in BC have $40,000 worth of debt than $40,000 worth of savings. So let's assume, and I think it's safe to assume, even though people don't like that word, but since I'm an ass, it doesn't really matter. Let's assume that most of the people on the street, in the right situation, circumstances, wouldn't be there. They're living there for whatever reason, and it doesn't matter. Because the problem's not going to stop. So 1 year would be more than enough time for them to get their shit together. Decide what they want to do with their life. They want to go back to school, training, or just the ability to find a normal job because you have your basic needs met, so you're not showing up at an interview looking disheveled physically or mentally. They could reconnect with family. They could use the other services provided by governments and agencies who are trying to help, but they could use them without the struggle. And once you get a lot of the people off the street, then the resources that are left can be used more efficiently. And maybe rather than having a shelter full of 300 men, you've got 30 men in self-contained apartments inside the building that used to be a shelter. Because if you don't have to shelter people every single night because they have a home to live in, then all of those properties can be converted into homes. And hell, charge them rent. They got $5,000 a month. Charge them $500. Charge them $1,000. It's still enough that they can live on and they can get their shit together. It's enough to go back to school. It's enough to get basic supplies for your own business. Who knows? Whatever. The homeless are creative. They have to be. It's the only way they can live, survive. But why? What purpose does it serve to have people living on the street? How does it help anyone? I really realize it sounds like I'm mostly just bitching and complaining. And even if it was just an experiment, a 1-year experiment, a lot of people with that sort of money, 60 grand, could live on half of that and have enough for 2 years. Or, like me, they could live on a third of that, or almost a third of that. I live on $1,500 a month, rent and food. That's all I need. And what does that do? What did it do? It gave me the space to think and figure out my own shit, which I think most people can do if they're given the opportunity. The problem is they're not given the opportunity because they can't get out of the fucking hole, and whatever that hole may be. I don't give a shit. It really matters. It does not matter. The reason for the homelessness should never be discussed, or at least it shouldn't be discussed in a manner of, oh, well, they're just drug addicts. Yes, they're drug addicts. Some of them. but they're also people. And they're someone's son, daughter, brother, sister, whoever. It doesn't matter. Why doesn't the government do something? I don't know. How is it in their best interest to leave people on the street, have everyone complain about it, and do nothing? The Canadian government, BC government, they own lots of buildings. Thousands and thousands of buildings. Hundreds which are empty. Sitting empty. If they really wanted to help, they could. But they don't. Why? For the same reason it would be almost impossible to convince every person in the US. For the same reason why it would be almost impossible to convince everyone in the US or Canada or anywhere or any for anyone to convince anyone to donate the $105. I mean, they'll give it a Red Cross or not Red Cross, United Way, which is a piece of shit organization that uses most of the money for themselves and their overhead. But what if we just dropped the right amount of cash into the BC welfare system, which by putting that cash directly into the hands of the person eliminates the need for much of the administration of the welfare system. Because instead of their quote-unquote clients coming in asking for help, needing money, needing social services, all that sort of thing, a lot of those issues go away. Almost all of them. So now instead of needing 10 clerks in an office, maybe you need 1 or 2. And maybe the rest of those clerks could go out in the street and directly help. But I'm sure that seems too logical for governments. The cost of healthcare would go down. Maybe not initially. There's probably going to be a few or a lot of overdoses. But again, that's their choice. Because given the chance, whether this system or some system like this gave them the money, or they just stumbled across it, they would take the same action. However, I believe most won't. They have the opportunity, safe place to live, security. So all those things that they don't have is what makes people want to drink and smoke and do whatever the fuck just to get out of their mind. Just get through the end of the day. Get to the next day. That's all they're doing. They're not trying to get high for some fucking enjoyment. They're not high getting partying. They're not at the beach getting drunk with their friends. They're under the fucking bridge that I'm looking at right now, shooting heroin or fentanyl. Because they know that will take them to where they want to be until the next day or until the next hit. But why? Does homelessness cause drug addiction, or does drug addiction cause homelessness? And why do we care? End homelessness and you're going to end most of the drug addiction. Because everyone that has their needs met, food, shelter, maybe an Xbox, Netflix, cell phone, those are all things that can help. I realize those are all technology based, but hang on. There's also just this whole stigma of homelessness. And again, once they can get off the street, get cleaned up, and look normal again, that stigma will go away. It'll be their choice if they want to tell people that they were once homeless or not. There's no requirement. They can start a new life. Hell, they could change their name. Change the name, start a brand new life, brand new resume, everything. And if it was only a year, I think most people under this quote unquote program would make a real effort to be self sufficient by the end of the year, or to save enough money to last into the next year. As I said before, I live on $1,500 a month. That's all I need. It's not a luxurious lifestyle. I much preferred when I was living on $6,000 or $5,000 a month, but it's fine. I'm safe. I'm healthy. I wouldn't say I'm happy, but that comes with time. Which was going to be my next point. Was how on earth someone on the street meet anyone from some sort of personal nature who isn't also on the street. It's not like there's a Tinder site for homeless people to meet people with homes. How many people would... Well, most people are so scared of the homeless they just looks down at their feet when they walk by. Like they're just going to jump up and slice your head off. It just doesn't happen. I'm not saying it's perfect and nobody ever gets attacked by a homeless person, but in general, if it was that big of a problem, we would see it more on the news, and we don't. All we see in the news is, oh, it's a problem, oh, they got tents, oh, they're sleeping in tents. Well, what the fuck do you expect them to do? Fucking morons. How about this? Next time you're sitting in Starbucks with your $5 or $6 or $7 or $8 coffee or whatever the fuck it is, and you donate $2 to this cause every time, because you're sitting in there bitching or criticizing or commenting on the homeless person in front of Starbucks begging for money so they can get off the street. You don't like that, but you don't mind talking to your friend about it. Put the person down, criticize them, even though you don't know who the fuck they are. And I've heard these conversations in Starbucks, Grace, and other coffee shops and all over the place, all over the internet. How many people actually know a homeless person? And if you know a homeless person, why the fuck aren't you doing something about it? If you can. But if you knew a homeless person and you knew that they could get $5,000 a month, you knew the guy or the girl just took a few wrong turns here or there, made some bad decisions, but deep down they're a good person, but through their mental health, current mental health, because they're living on the street and or drug addiction, they're down a path that they'll never recover from until someone steps in, until someone helps. And who's going to help? Now I'm getting a little frustrated, Grace, because I can see how this could actually work. So what else would happen if we just eliminated or removed every homeless person off the street with this system? How much less of a police force would we need? Or even if we didn't need less, they could be doing something that benefits all of the population, rather than just being security guards, which is what they're doing with the homeless. There's no point putting people in jail for drugs. Again, probably spend $5,000 a month keeping them in jail. And I'm not saying release every criminal in jail and give them $5,000, but I'm also saying don't discriminate. The guy on the street that was in jail is now living homeless. He isn't committing any more crimes. He's just trying to survive. Does that person deserve to be kicked in the nuts all day long? I don't think so, Grace. It took me 3 years to get my shit together, Grace. 3 years of peace and quiet. 3 years of thinking. 3 years of writing. Everything. 3 years of loneliness. But by choice. Because I knew, and I understand, that when you're around others, they influence you. How many people on the street are simply there because they don't want to be around their family? For whatever reason. The reason is none of our business, it's none of our concern. It's their choice, they're adults. And that's my point. They're adults. We gotta treat everyone like adults. And just an adult human. Not an adult mentally not challenged, but mental health, whatever. No labels. They're just humans, they're just adults. They need help. Or this problem isn't going away. Why would it go away? What is going to change with the current system that will get people off the street? Nothing. Not a single fucking thing. So maybe everyone who isn't homeless is just a cunt. Just a cunt because they're not willing to do something about this problem. Here you go, $105 a year. You solve the problem. It goes away. The streets are safer, society is safer. Everyone knows that maybe if they make a mistake, there's a program in place to help them. And even the ones under the program can afford the $105 for the next batch. So they get a little less than $60,000 a year, but they contribute back. And tell me this, someone that's been taken off the street, they get a chance to get their life together, they get a job, they go back to school, they reunite with family, they find a friend, a lover, or whatever. You telling me those people wouldn't be grateful and they wouldn't want to give $105 or $210 or $1,000 or whatever they could fucking afford to help the next person that gets in that position? Goddamn rights they would. About half the people that were at rehab when I was at rehab were there simply to stay off the street because it was winter, and winter's a bitch, and they know the system, and it's easier for them to check into rehab when it gets cold, spend 3 months there, and then they're safe for 3 months. Yes, they go through a program, but like I say, most of these people are addicts because they're on the street. And once they get off the street, and they're fed, and they're sheltered, and they have people around them that they can talk to, and they can make friends with. Half the people in my rehab were from the street, the other half were just normal people. Some had jobs, some were there because of their job, because they fucked up in their job, but the job says, look, you go to rehab and you can keep your job. A lot of them were, not a lot, but some were there on insurance. So they had some sort of healthcare insurance for their job that paid for it. But all the homeless people and myself are there on the government dollar. So how it works, Grace? How it works in BC, Grace, is if you're on welfare and you go into a rehab, the rehab takes most of the welfare money. And then they also get extra money from the government, but they get most of the welfare money. You get a little stipend. Stipend, whatever it is. But there's not a lot of money you need in rehab. Everything's provided for you. Food, shelter, obviously, emotional support, AA if you need it. A lot of the guys just do the AA program, then they just lie, which is what I did. I went to rehab to stay off the street too. Actually, I went to rehab to get onto disability because I knew the amount of disability I could live on. And while I could have used a rehab 15 or 20 years ago, when I did go, I didn't need it. So I faked it. I lied. I told stories. I write. I can say anything I want. I could be anyone I want, anytime, anywhere. And that's what I did to survive. Because I was at the point where I was not going to live with relatives. I was not going to live in any situation or with anyone that was not conducive to my own thinking, to my own thoughts, my own desires. And while I don't want to continue this the rest of my life, it's fine. I'm safe. I'll live. I'm impatient as fuck, but I'll live. However, enough about me, Grace. Just using this as an example, because I believe. Now, the other thing, Grace, in rehab, there's a guys in there for every addiction you can imagine. Whatever drug, whatever you can imagine, there's a story about it. But yet, I didn't see a lot of people like jonesing for a fix, as they call it, or detoxing to such a degree that they're shaking and all that sort of stuff. Now, depending on your age, you actually have to go through detox before you can get into rehab. But still, what I'm saying is, most of them just seemed like they were there to get through the program and then get back to their lives. Or, in the case of the people that were there that were homeless, then they're looking to get into secondary housing, which was something I also considered too. Because after rehab, you can get into a secondary housing facility, and from there, they're often good. They help you get jobs and a lot of other things. And all those programs could remain, technically. But then maybe the people that are going there are more of the, housewives who drink 2 or 3 bottles of wine a day and can't stop and haven't stopped for years. If you don't think that happens, Grace, just go hang out in front of a liquor store for a day or a few hours. Do it at the same time every day. Go to the same liquor store for 3 hours every day and record. Do that for a month. And then have your little AI program go through face recognition and see how many regulars there are. How many housewives are getting that wine, or husbands with the beer, or whatever. I don't care. Everyone's a fucking addict. Everyone has something that they do that they'd rather not do. But as long as you maintain your job and your house and everything else, then you're not an addict. See, an addict isn't about the quantity, it's about how it affects your life. But it's easy for them being the non-homeless addicts, to judge. How fucking dare they? It pisses me off, Grace. If I could fucking change it, I would. And I really don't think the government will change it. I think they have a system where if the money could be put into it, under the condition that 100% of the money goes to the people on the street, I guarantee you government costs will go down because their needs will go down. So if anything, it would save the government money, and maybe that money that they save could go back into the program, or if they're worried about the people that are going to get laid off from the system, again, that could all go into more programs that are conducive to people who need help for a year or 2. I took 3, but I'm a little slow in the head. And a lot of people could do it quicker. I think if you ask most homeless people, there's 1 or 2 things in their lives that they could change. If they could change, would make all the difference in the world. I heard all the stories in rehab. I know what people go through. I've gone to AA meetings and sat there and listened. And the stories are the same. They're just repetitive over and over again. If AI listened to all those stories, compiled them, it could find a solution. It could find new programs, whatever. It doesn't matter. Or maybe it's a graduated system. 5,000 a month for the first year, 4 for the second, third, 3 for the third, and so on. Been talking so long, my battery's dying, Grace. I'll be right back. Alright, Grace. I'm going to continue on, but I'm using my other phone. It's a different recording system, so I can't stop the train sounds. So we're back to the big pauses. Assuming you don't mind. If you do, stop listening. Anyways, where was I? There wasn't a single person in rehab that I was scared of, that I thought would hurt me, that I thought was a criminal, that I thought was a bad person, an evil person, anything. Regardless of what stories they told about what they did to themselves or to others, to me, they were simply people who were either hurt in the past, made mistakes, went down a wrong path, and nobody is there to help them correct it. To me, that's as simple as it was. But I'm naive. I'm naive. Clearly, to think a plan like this would ever work. Wouldn't it be nice to know that there's a safety net for everyone? Actually, let's go back to the graduated for 1 second, Grace, sorry. Because I know everyone that's listening is like, oh, $5,000 a month, that's so much, blah, blah, blah. Look at you, Dave, you live it on $1,500. Fucking rights I am. It's my choice. But I'm also not getting anywhere. I'm not advancing. To a degree. I feel a lot better. I'm not advancing. But that's my choice. Because I'm determined to either be a writer or be dead. Those are my only 2 options. But that's me. I'm an adult. It's my choice. I can choose to live like this. I can choose to live I can choose or live or be someone that someone would call ADHD or autistic or just a dumb fucker, whatever. I don't care. It's my choice. It's my choice to post these, my choice to record this. Everything in my life is my choice. Because of that, nobody can tell me what to do. I'm not surrounded by anyone's opinion. Not even yours, Grace, because you don't comment. Although I got a feeling I know what you'd say, but actually I don't, because we've never talked. So you may think I'm a fucking idiot too, and that's fine. It's your choice. If that's what you believe, I'd say there's the door, but since you've never come in the door, you can't really leave the door. So a graduated system and give them both incentive and ability to put in place whatever they need. Let's say to live on $2,000 a month. $1,500 is not enough. 2,000 isn't enough either, but if you've lived a year on 5, a year on 4, and a year on 3, you've had 3 years. Hell, it's almost enough to get a degree. In fact, you could get a degree in 3 years because you don't have to work. You go to school and take double the course load and get a degree a lot faster. And don't anyone say they're too fucking stupid to get a degree. Because I'll tell you what, the people I met in rehab who lived on the street were not too fucking stupid to get a degree. They were not stupid at all. Although, to be fair, Grace, I'm not sure what good a degree is anymore. I think it's a waste of fucking time. But who knows? Maybe education will make a rebound. Grace. I mean, ultimately, isn't the goal that everyone has a fulfilling job, a job they want to go to, and then come back and have a house or an apartment with the person they want to be with, or maybe a cat, or 2, or 3. Why not? It's their business. Who cares? Want to be a crazy old cat lady the rest of your life with 4 or 5 cats? Go ahead. If that's what makes you happy, do it. And it's so stupid. It's such a small fraction of the population. It's tiny. It's a solvable problem. It's not like a third world country where everyone is poor. It's a first world country where a small percentage is poor. And for some reason, a large percentage do not give a fuck. Sorry for the pause, Grace. My friend, the rat, is out checking out the backyard. He doesn't see me because I'm not sitting where I normally do, but now I can observe him. He goes on this little route. I guess he's looking for food. He's not a big rat. He's like, he's smaller than a squirrel. He lives under the house. I don't trap him. It's not my house, but I don't tell the owner. Although to be fair, there he saw me finally, now he's gone. I'm not sitting where I normally sit. Where I normally sit, he runs behind me and scares the fuck out of me. But I digress. Is that ADHD or is that just the environment I'm in? I'm sitting outside under a tree, beside a train, crows, rats. There's a lot to focus on. I should be doing this with my eyes closed in a studio. But that's not realistic. And I think a phone is all you need to record something like this. Because either the content is there or it isn't. Ooh. He's back. Oh, I see what he did. He went around the shed to the other side so he could avoid me. See, even the rats are smart. Anyways, back to a very small percentage of the population. And why? It's the ultimate discrimination. It's a discrimination for just being alive. The homeless are being discriminated against just for being alive and for making whatever. One mistake, 100 mistakes. I don't give a fuck. There's a reason they're there. And if someone went and talked to them, they could find out. But there's no reason to go talk to them if they can't help. What's the point of talking to a person and say, hey, tell me your story? Oh, that's sad. Let me post that on YouTube. But then don't help out. What the fuck is that point? Guys on YouTube that I see make the most difference are the ones that give large amounts of money. Peter Bond, he's mostly in New York, but he goes other places as well. He gives $500 or $1,000, no questions asked. He does have a bit of a little bit of a routine before he gives them the money. However, the thing I noticed with him is when he goes back and he does follow-ups, as far as I can tell, every one of the people that he's helped, it's made a difference. I got a job, or they say, I got an apartment, or they say, I contacted family, or they say any number of things, but they're all positive, and how much that $500 or $1,000 made a difference in their life. So, yes, I realize I'm also making it sound like everyone would be responsible for the $5,000, and that's not going to happen. But they'll be off the street and hopefully making an effort. But yeah, there's going to be a few parties, I'm sure. But then again, why not? If you've been living on the street for 3 or 4 or 10 years, Grace, or 20 years, wouldn't you party a little bit? Wouldn't you celebrate that you're off the street, relaxed? Who are we to judge? Which is what we do. Every time we walk by the homeless, look at it on the news, look at it on YouTube, just judgment. I can't stand it, Grace. I don't understand it. Not that I can't stand it, I just don't understand it. I don't understand, this is not a $1 trillion problem. It is a $1 billion problem, but there are billionaires whose annual salary could cover it. I believe Elon Musk makes 45 billion or 56 billion, something like that I saw, a year. And I believe my calculation for the US was 39 billion. Those numbers line up. I'm not saying it's Elon's responsibility, but he did once say that if the program was in place, he would help end homelessness. Or something like that, or if there was a program that he believed in or trusted or something like that. I can't remember his exact fucking quote. I'm sitting outside in the rain talking to a phone. But it's not his responsibility either. It would be nice if him and others as rich as him would do something, would get off their fucking asses, would support a program like this, whether it's through the government or whether it's just an individual organization. An organization with $40 billion to spend. And if you want to do it that way and not use the government, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of YouTubers out there trying to help the homeless, people they know are homeless, people they can confirm are homeless, people they talk to, people they get to know, people they want to help. Have them distribute it. Have them sign up the person. If you go to Peter Bond's site, he's a pretty good judge of character, as most of them are. They can help. They can sign the people up. They can get them off the street. They can take them to the hotel. That's what they're doing already. They take them to hotels and pay for 2 or 3 nights. Or if they can, a month. There's many people out there on YouTube who are doing that. The lists of people, Grace, are in the description of this podcast and every other fucking one I put up. It's literally an army of people that are willing to help others. And I'll guarantee you, none of them not a single fucking one would ask for money, ask for it to be a job. All of them would gladly do it. And how do I know that? Because I listen to the videos. I watch them, but I listen to them. If you go to any of the channels that I've listed and you listen to them, you'll hear the sincerity in their voice. You know that they are truly trying to help. They're not doing it for YouTube views or cash. They're taking that money they're making from YouTube and putting it right back into the system, helping more and more people. Yes, they get more viewers. Great. Perfect. So then they get more cash and they help more people. But they don't have enough. They need to be giving away. They need to be setting people up $5,000 a month. Don't you think most people would agree or understand that if they got that money and it was only for a year or 2 or 3 or graduated or whatever, it doesn't matter. Most people are going to remember all those fucking nights in the street, how many times they were robbed, beat up, raped, all the above. And they're not going to want to go back to that. Who would? So yeah, some will blow the money, but I'll bet you over 90% won't. And over 90% will realize that this is their second chance, an opportunity to get out of what they put themselves in, or what the system put themselves in, or whatever. I don't care. It makes no difference. I'm a little pissed, Grace, because the more I talk about this, the simpler in my mind it is. Just imagine how many emergency room visits are going to go down because people are going there just for a night off the street. How many robberies would go down just because they don't need to rob someone for their drugs or whatever? Doesn't that make sense? Because insurance is going to pay for it, or the government's going to pay for it, or we're going to have to hire more cops, or whatever. It's all going to be more, and more. But it's not going to stop the problem. And even fucking if they decide to continue using drugs, what do you think the odds are that they'll be out on the street using those drugs instead of in their apartment using those drugs? And if they're in an apartment using their drugs, like what? Every single fucking person, maybe not every single person, but if they're in their apartment doing whatever, I don't care if it's fentanyl. The guys in rehab, most of them say fentanyl is better than heroin, if you can get it pure. Because then at least you know it's only fentanyl, and you know the amount. You get heroin mixed with fentanyl, you don't know what the fuck you're getting. But according to the public, drug addicts are stupid. No, they're not. They know what they're doing. But if you're addicted to opiates, and you can't get fentanyl, you're going to go for heroin or whatever else you can get. Simple as that. It's obvious. But I believe, I may be wrong, I believe most of the so-called bad drugs or hard drugs would slow down. And maybe even someone who's used to heroin, who has a chance to, go to rehab or something for 3 months and get off it, they will. Or maybe they won't. Maybe some won't. But it'll be their choice. My question is, why is it okay for weed to be legal now and everyone just ties a fucking kite at home? That's fine. That's not addiction. No, that's normal. But if they do it on the street, it's a problem. It's just a visual thing. It's like people are so concerned with others' appearance and behaviors that they don't recognize their own. And that's what pisses me off. And there's sources of revenue. Fucking take the money from weed taxes, take the money from alcohol taxes, which in BC are fucking nuts. Use that money. Everyone who has a house and they're drinking and whatever every night, that tax money would easily work out to $105 a year. But they don't. And now I'm just rambling, Grace. And I'm sure I've missed about 1,000 fucking points. However. I think I'm done. I think that's my grand idea. I didn't mean to criticize Joe. I just think he's looking at it from a perspective that everyone is equal. And quite frankly, we're not. Everyone doesn't need universal income. Everyone doesn't want universal income. I think most of the population are relatively happy with their lives. I don't see a lot of smiles on people's faces as I walk down the street, but in general, they're safe, they're secure, they're making their own decisions. They're not being told what to do by others, where to go, where to live, where not to live, where they can smoke drugs and where they can't smoke drugs, where they can drink, where they can't drink, where they can sleep, where they can't sleep. No, most people have their lives somewhat normal. Work, play, sleep. Homeless, a little different. There's no work, there's no play, and they have to find a place to sleep. Whereas if everyone spent one night a month living on the street, how long do you think it would take before they coughed up $105? Just 1 month. Go sleep in your backyard in a tent or without a tent. Just sleep in a sleeping bag like they are. But they won't. Because they're a bunch of pussies. But we're not equal. We should be. Truly evil people, sure, maybe they need to be locked up. But most of the people in the street are not evil. And most of them who you may, not you Grace, but whoever else is listening, you may call criminals or undesirables or losers or whatever, it's because you haven't taken the fucking time to listen to their story. More than just watching it on YouTube for 30 or 60 seconds. Or maybe YouTube could get off their ass and donate some $1 billion to this situation, to my solution. They're making a ton of money off all these videos of homeless people. They all have advertising on there. Shouldn't that money go to the homeless? The YouTube part, not just the contributor part? But no, YouTube doesn't do that. Google doesn't give a fuck about the homeless. Why the fuck would they? None of those organizations do. They all have the money. You telling me Apple doesn't have $39 billion lying around? Guarantee you they do. But they're cunts too, so whatever. At this point, Grace, I'm like, fuck it all. This is a problem that could fucking be solved. But nobody wants to open up their fucking eyes, get off their fucking ass, donate the fucking cash, and do something fucking about it. Talk to you tomorrow, Grace.